Here's what's coming up on the world today. Sudan braces for more violence despite 72-hour ceasefire extension. Texas police release photos of mass shooting suspect as hunts for shooter continues. Paraguay ruling party candidate Santiago Panda celebrates election victory. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Anne Nwawodo. Let's begin in Sudan, where the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF paramilitary, say they will extend a humanitarian ceasefire for another 72 hours. But fighting has continued as both sides accuse the other of ceasefire violations. The truce was later to end on Sunday, but the two warring parties agreed to extend it for another 3 days. The RSF said that it had agreed to the truce extension to open humanitarian passages, facilitate the movement of citizens and enable them get their needs and reach safe areas. Sudan has been witnessing a large-scale evacuation of foreign nationals and diplomats by air, land and sea since the eruption of the deadly clash between the army and the RSF in Khartoum and other areas on April the 15th. But so far, the clashes have left more than 500 people dead and over 4,000 wounded. Meanwhile, smoke rose over Sudan's capital skyline as conflict shows no sign of easing. Sound of artillery airstrikes and anti-aircraft fire could be heard in Khartoum in the early hours of today. That's despite the supposed ceasefire extension. And the United Nations warned of the humanitarian breakpoint as clashes between rival military forces entered a third week. Hundreds of people have been killed and thousands wounded since long simmering tensions between the Sudanese army and the RSF erupted into conflict on April the 15th. Many fear for their lives as Sudan's two most powerful men persecute war in the country that was faced with civil wars, coups and economic hardship for decades. And people in Khartoum rushed to shops as grocery stores partially opened today. Fighting was heard despite the extension of the ceasefire. Both sides had agreed to extend a much-violated humanitarian ceasefire that had been due to expire at midnight for a further 72 hours. In a move, the RSF has said in response to international, regional and local calls. The army said it hoped that what it called the rebels would abide by the deal, but it believed they had intended to keep up with the attacks. Meanwhile, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, is scaling up efforts to assist people fleeing from Sudan and seeking safety and asylum in neighboring countries like Chad. In Chad, the UN Refugee Agency and its partners have developed emergency teams along the eastern border with Sudan to respond to urgent needs for protection and humanitarian assistance. The clashes in Sudan might trigger intense displacement both within and outside the country. The government of Chad and UNHCR have initiated pre-registration activities to identify new arrivals and assess their needs.
UNHCR's strategy here for the response is first to assist people coming to make sure that the welcoming process is well done. First point. The second thing, to ensure that all the protection concerns are clearly understood, then addressed. So we have deployed a lot of staff for the registration, which is key for the beginning of the response. We need to know the nature of the people we want to support. So registration is the first activities ongoing. And secondly, we are trying to make sure that we have a proper border control movement to have the incoming new people incoming in the border so that we can monitor also that situation. But third is the assistance in terms of water, education. If we fail to act now, it will be too late. The rainy season is coming in few weeks, and if we don't provide any assistance to the people, the road will be blocked and all the refugees here will be stopped. And we definitely need to provide assistance in terms of water, health, and shelter as quickly as possible in order to food also in order to ensure that people are safe and protected.
In the meantime, families fleeing the conflict in Sudan arrived at the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees UNHCR-assisted camp in neighboring Chad as the refugee agency increases its presence for displaced people in that region. Many refugees arrived at the camp on foot, carrying few personal belongings, while others used horses and donkeys to travel across the Sudan-Chad border. Several arrivals at the camp received medical attention from aid workers, while others were able to fill canisters and containers with water from a nearby truck. Since the beginning of the fight, at least 20,000 refugees have fled across the border into Chad. A land crossing on the Egyptian side bordering Sudan is witnessing a surge of people fleeing the conflict-ridden country with busloads of anxious travelers enduring a long and uncertain journey as they look to escape from the fighting. But thousands of Sudanese and foreign nationals are escaping the violence in Sudan through the land border crossings of Gustol and Agreen. Gustol is just a 15-minute ride from Wadi Halfa, which is the closest city in Sudan to the border. Travelers are forced to spend days on the Sudanese side until they sort out their entry to Egypt. Many foreign governments have scrambled to evacuate their citizens from the country. Meanwhile, Sudan's neighbors are also facing economic strains as they take in refugees from the conflict. In Chad, for example, people are seeing the cost of goods rise by as much as 70% in a matter of weeks. Adam Ibrahim Dahab, a resident of Adre, says that it is getting very difficult to afford 4 meals a day. Bashira Ishak, a Sudanese refugee and trader in the border city, said that anyone with stock will now try to sell at a higher price. However, in neighboring South Sudan, the influx of refugees is also putting great pressure on scarce resources. The World Food Programme has announced that it is resuming operations in Sudan, and that's after the suspension of April the 16th, after 3 of its staff were killed during the conflict. Many aid groups have not been able to operate since the conflicts began. The United Nations said that it is now working closely with Egyptian authorities to help the people arriving at the border escape the conflict in Sudan after complaints of international response to the crisis had been lacking. And talking about international complaints, the International Committee of Red Cross has delivered a first international shipment of humanitarian aid to the port of Sudan. According to a statement released by the organization, the medical shipment also includes anesthetics, dressings, sutures, and other surgical materials for them.
No one has managed to get medical assistance into the country, which is badly needed. This medical assistance will hopefully travel quite quickly from Port Sudan, delivered to the hospitals that are in most need. And that requires indeed a ceasefire that should be respected by both sides for us to be able, with our colleagues from the Sudanese Red Crescent, to deliver these items as quickly as we can to the hospitals and allow the medical personnel, doctors and nurses, but also first aid volunteers to do their job. Because for now, as much as they're trying, people are extremely disappointed because no one, unfortunately, is able to build a strong humanitarian response as it needed. Since the 14th of April, the number of casualties has only increased because the fighting is happening in densely populated area in a capital of 6 million people. The World Health Organization has reported over 4,700 injured with almost 450 dead. And these require indeed medical assistance, but also require a strong and steady but also a professional dead body management. And I hope this will be only the first of a number of batches that will come, will be extremely crucial for the hospitals to be able to cater for the needs of thousands of people that are flocking to their doors and waiting to get medical assistance.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is sending his emergency relief chief Martin Griffiths to Sudan amid the unprecedented situation there. According to a statement, he says that Sudan's humanitarian situation is reaching a breakpoint and essential items were becoming increasingly scarce, especially in Khartoum. Griffiths adds that the people are struggling to find food, water and fuel, and rising cost of transportation is also making it impossible for the poorest to reach safer locations. He said that he's on his way to the region to explore how to bring immediate relief to millions of people whose lives have turned upside down overnight, reiterating the need for the fighting to stop. Other stories, over 200 law enforcement officers in Texas are out searching for a man accused of shooting to death 5 neighbors, including an 8-year-old boy in Cleveland, Texas. 38-year-old Francisco Rapesa is accused of opening fire on neighbors after being asked to stop shooting an AR-15 style rifle because it was keeping a baby awake. San Jacinto County Sheriff Greg Kepper said that law enforcement personnel were going door to door looking for the suspect or any tips on how to find him. Officials are offering an $80,000 reward for information that will lead to the suspect's apprehension.
I'd like to announce that the FBI is also offering an additional $25,000 for the apprehension of this subject. So it brings the total amount of the reward to $80,000. If anybody, whether you are here in this county or this state of Texas or around the country, have any tips, we're asking you to please call 1-800-FBI-TIPS. We have over 200 law enforcement personnel from federal, state, and local agencies trying to bring this subject into custody so we can bring justice to those 5 victims and to ensure this community is safe. We cannot continue down this path until we get him apprehended and arrested. So again, we're asking everyone for your help so we can bring this suspect, or this monster, I will call him, to justice.
My heart is with this 8-year-old little boy. I don't care if he was here legally. I don't care if he was here illegally. He was in my county. 5 people died in my county, and that is where my heart is, in my county, protecting my people to the best of our ability. Right now, we're going door to door with these 200 officers. They're going door to door, knocking on people's homes or knocking on people's houses, asking questions, looking for tips. This $80,000 is in my opinion, a real good motivator to have somebody turn him in. We currently are having billboard poster signs made 4 foot by 5 foot, written in Spanish, so that community can help itself. And if they read that sign, they will know that there's a $80,000 reward out for this man. And that's just today. Who knows what tonight or tomorrow will bring. But we're looking for closure for this family.
Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird joins me now for more on this. Hello, Maria, and thank you for joining us on The World Today. Well, another shooting in Texas. What more do we know apart from the details we already have? And how are political leaders reacting to this latest mass shooting that has happened again?
Well, this is unfortunately we is also with president announced mass shooting just not many days ago, having to expand on young people. So this is something I think that the whole country is heartbroken about. We saw in earlier reports that the county officials are heartbroken by the loss of these 5 lives. And also, we know that this individual, as you stated earlier, there were over 200 officers in this specific area, about 45 minutes outside of in the suburb. He was able to slip through, they believe, that had over 150 officers there on the scene. And it was called, they call it drag net, to try to capture him or catch him. And he was able to slip through that. They're unsure of how that happened. So they lost all leads on being able to find him. They do know exactly who he is. So that's helpful. But just a day ago, they were on to being able to actually locate him, but now they believe he has left the Houston area and even the surrounding areas of Houston.
All right, Maria, but how are political leaders reacting to this latest shooting?
The administration is reacting in a way of one, obviously, push for gun laws. We know this was an AR-13 or AR-15 rifle. This rifle is one that has been called for before to be banned in the United States. These type of rifles, which are, as it was stated in the reports, this was done in execution style. Any rifle that is on the market that can be used to execute people at the type of deadly force that many of these AR rifles can perform is something that our president, many congressional members has called for gun laws and gun restrictions against. And so I think this is just furthering the push for further gun laws. Is it going to happen? I think is what many Americans are losing hope in. But many Americans, are hoping that there will be a day that we begin to see it, and that this day is not too far gone and not too long from now.
But what more do we know about the suspect? Does he have a history of gun violence, or is this just a one-off attack? Has he ever been caught in this kind of thing before?
What they stated was that they heard guns portion of the home. They have stated that in the state of Texas, depending on the size of the property, having gunfire go off is not uncommon, nor is it something that is not unlawful. But that is about all that they have stated. Many of his neighbors have furthermore stated that they live in a family-oriented community and that he was considered a family guy. And so when you talk about someone that lived in a family-oriented community, and many of those in that community did not feel frightened by him and were not expecting this type of behavior from him, which is why it's not unexpected that he would have fled, because he was not perceived to be this type of individual.
Again, Maria, I know we've talked about U.S. President Joe Biden's call for gun control, but how is that playing out in Congress? I know that you had already talked about that, but do we have any more information about how they are taking this seriously, or how seriously Congress is taking this issue of gun control in the United States?
Well, it's going to really be upon those members in the state of Texas, how much they can work with other congressional members to try to use this as another example of why gun control laws are going to be vital across the country. We are getting ready for another major election here in 2024. We know that our current president has said that he's running for re-election. And so this is going to be at a top priority for the upcoming election. But hopefully we are going to see a reduction in mass shootings, and there will be some call to action to be able to reduce the amount of guns that are on the streets illegally or are in the hands of individuals that are causing these mass shootings and these deadly attacks.
And for this gun control and the mass shooting that's been happening, is it gaining traction? What are the candidates saying, other candidates? How is it going to affect the 2024 elections in the U.S.?
Well, unfortunately, we still see many of them in the Republican Party, especially those for they're very much for the right. That is one of the constitutional rights that But the challenge at this time is that you see where the right to bear arms is leading to the execution style of many Americans. And the Democratic Party is really working hard. We're probably going to see our congressional member Hakeem Jeffries, who is a minority leader. He will definitely probably be speaking out as to how this can be addressed further and try to use
All right. Thank you very much, Maria Bird, for your time on The World Today. Thank you so much. And to our viewers, we sincerely apologize for the audio problems there during the conversation. Let's move to other stories. At least 18 people have died and 33 others injured after a bus fell off a cliff in western Mexico. The prosecutor's office, the state where the accident happened, said the vehicle fell off 15 meters down a ravine, with a highway that connects state capital Tepic and the tourist destination of Puerto Vallarta. Authorities have reported that 11 women and 7 men were killed, and at least 11 minors have been transferred to hospitals for medical attention. Mariatta's Security and Civil Prosecution Ministry says that rescue efforts are always continuing to search for more crash victims. Voters across Uzbekistan cast ballots in referendum on constitutional amendments, reflecting a surge in people's political engagements as the country decides the shape its future will take. The voting process across the Central Asian nation has been quite straightforward. Participants simply marked whether they accept or do not accept the new constitution. Officials expect around 20 million ballots to be cast during the referendum. We'll give you more in this report.
A national referendum on proposed constitutional reform started in Uzbekistan over the weekend, which was regarded as a turning point in the country's politics. The amended draft constitution contains significant changes in citizens' rights, judicial fairness, and other areas. Officials say they expect more than 20 million people to vote. More than 60% of the current constitution's content would be changed. Uzbek officials say the amendments would be better to protect the citizens and promote judicial fairness while extending the presidential term from 5 to 7 years.
I read the old constitution and the new amendment. I really like the new one. The previous one was not bad, thanks to our president. It was well written, and it addresses the pain of the people from the bottom of their hearts.
In the past, the general public was not involved in political events like this. But now, people are coming here because they are interested.
More than 10,000 polling stations have been established throughout the country and worldwide for citizens living overseas.
We've reached out to every single person in our community and sent them invitations with our address and phone numbers on them. People then come and vote with their invitations.
We are prioritizing security. It's necessary for the government to organize a peaceful referendum, which is also good for the public, and not just in Uzbekistan.
The preliminary results of the referendum are scheduled to be unveiled later on in the week.
Paetongtarn Shinawatra, who's a leading candidate to become Thailand's next prime minister, has given birth to a boy just 2 weeks before election day. He leads a opposition, the Phu Thai party. She announced the birth of her son on Instagram with a photo from the hospital. She's being voters' first or second choice for prime minister since campaigning began. She's been trading places in polls with Peter Limjaroniat of the Progressive Move Forward party. Paraguay's ruling candidate Santiago Pena scored a big win in the country's presidential election over the weekend, tightening the conservative Colorado Party's political grip in the country and diffusing fears about the end of diplomatic ties in Taiwan. 44-year-old Pena, who had pledged to maintain Paraguay's long-standing Taiwan relations, had 42.7% of the vote, with over 99% of the ballots counted, a more than 15-point lead over the center-left rival Efrain Alegre, who had argued for switching allegiance to China. The election results leaves Pena facing a challenge to revive Paraguay's farm-driven economy and shrink a major fiscal deficit. It also underscores the dominance of the Colorado Party, which has ruled for all by 5 of the last 75 years, has a fierce campaign machine despite rising discontent from some voters over the slowing economy and corruption allegations. Welcome back. You're still watching The World Today on Channels Television. Before that break, we told you about a referendum and Uzbekistan citizens casting ballots today. Now we have VOA correspondent in Uzbekistan, Navajo Imamova from Washington, D.C. to tell us, give us an update on this. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
My pleasure. Navajo Imamova is here. I am originally from Uzbekistan and have been reporting for the Voice of America for nearly 20 years now. This is the third time have voted for on a referendum, actually, and these events usually take place peacefully. The country is stable. Uzbekistan is the largest country in Central Asia. It has a population of over 36 million people, and it has been ruled by Shavkat Mirziyoyev since late 2016. It had a parliamentary election in 2019, presidential elections in 2021, and now we have just had this referendum. And the main purpose of this referendum is to update Uzbekistan's constitution, which was initially adopted in 1992 when Uzbekistan became independent. It was one of the parts of the former Soviet Union. So it has been a pretty long, complex journey for Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan has very low human rights ratings if we want to compare it with other countries in the world or in that neighborhood. It is heavily politically influenced by Russia. It is west of China, north of Afghanistan, west of Iran. So it's a very strategic neighborhood. So the international community watches what happens in that region in Uzbekistan with a really deep attention and focus. It has balanced relations, I would say, in general, with the West and the East. Of course, China and Russia are its main partners, but it has also tried lately to get closer to the West. The most controversial part of this constitution is the extension of the presidential term from 5 to 7 years, and this is the second time this part of the constitution is changing for Uzbekistan, and it's quite a signal for the public, because every time this happens, the president of the country gets a chance to nullify his previous terms, and thus creating a ground for himself to hold on power for as long as possible. We saw something like this in the 2000s with the previous president Islam Karimov. Now the same thing is happening with Shavkat Mirziyoyev, and there is a sense of disappointment around the country, as we see, because people want to see President Mirziyoyev as more democratic. They want him to leave power in 2016 when his current second term ends. But now we are actually expecting snap elections later this year, although the date has not been announced yet, and we're yet to hear about it from the Central Election Commission. But most probably, we predict humbly here at Voice of America that Uzbekistan will have a presidential election later this year, and Mirziyoyev will get a fresh term that is, 7 years as long, and then he'll have a chance to run again. Uzbekistan has never really had a transfer of power. Presidents have usually died in the position, to put it simply. So this time around, because of Mirziyoyev's democratic agenda, because of his promise of reforms, the expectations have been really high. And so these referendums, this vote yesterday, although confirmed by more than 90%, the OSCE, Organization of European Security and Cooperation, has never rated any elections in Uzbekistan as free and fair. And this time around, it is basically saying what it has said about elections in Uzbekistan for the longest time, that it lacks competition. There is no opposition. There are no alternative views in the country, and media are not providing a balanced picture of public opinion. So you have a country that wants to be more democratic. You have a country that wants to be more free and wants to have a better leader, a more democratic leader. But right now, it seems that it is backsliding. If we were to see another, as I said, election later this year, which would give a fresh term for the current president.
All right. Thank you very much for your robust contribution on this issue. Definitely be getting back to you later to give us updates on this referendum. But thank you very much for your contribution on the world today, and have a good day.
My pleasure.
To other stories now, thousands of South Korean workers occupied a boulevard in downtown Seoul, staging a large-scale May Day rally to demand improved laborers' rights and better working conditions. Yang Kung-soo, the leader of the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, one of the major unions leading the rally, where about 30,000 participated, said that we will fight strongly to improve the legal system so that government policies guarantee workers' rights. The group also declared at the rally it plans to hold a general strike in the month of July to denounce the labor policies of South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's administration. The conservative Yoon, who took office in 2022, has repeatedly said that his government will strictly apply the law to labor relations in a country with a long record of fractious industrial relations. Hundreds of Filipino activists held a rally in Manila to mark International Workers' Day and a call on the government for better wages and treatment of laborers. Activists held banners, sang slogans at a rally near the presidential palace to demand the minimum wage be increased to 570 pesos, and that's about $10.5 per day, and in an improvement of benefits the struggling workers are already receiving. International Workers' Day, also known as Labor Day, is traditionally celebrated on May the 1st to honor the working class and highlight the importance of laborers in the workforce around the world.
It's very bleak, as many have noted. We are at an unprecedented devaluation of the real value of wages. There hasn't been any significant wage increase, much less wage increase to approximate living wage. We have an unemployment crisis situation in the country. We have working people constantly trying to make ends meet, and the government still hasn't effected any significant actions to mitigate the crisis.
And Guinea's national sports stadium buzzed with people seeking a different kind of workout this week as minds flexed and stretched in pursuit not of muscle gains this time, but literary enrichment. The 15th edition of Guinea's 72 Hours Off the Book Festival unfolded in venues across the capital, Conakry, bringing together a wide array of writers, publishers, and readers from the West African country and across the continent.
The annual three-day event is aimed at celebrating books and promoting literacy in a nation where over half the population is illiterate. According to World Bank figures, and access to libraries is limited. According to World Bank figures, and access to libraries are limited. Despite its low literacy rate, Guinea boasts a rich literary heritage and more than a dozen publishing houses. Most, however, struggle for funds to undertake large production runs. Those that do tend to focus on foreign works. But Conakry's arena transformed into a haven this week for readers clamoring to meet their favorite local authors, writers seeking to expand their audiences, and budding creators who took part in workshops.
Learning things with games. Creating stories with things you yourself create in your own imagination. That's what I like, and that's what makes me come here. I like it too much.
Spread across broad tables, works in French, English, Fulani, and a cross-section of local languages draw festival goers to local authors like Ousmane El Haj, who for the last 3 years has used the festival to reach new readers.
We are committed to doing more to attend the problems and challenges workers are facing in the country. And those are words from the Deputy President of South Africa, Paul Mashatile. He was addressing workers at the May Day celebration in Pretoria, South Africa. However, labor unions are skeptical of the government, saying that it will not deliver on its promises, and are now calling for more concrete action to address corruption and improve job security. President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the Kosatu rally at the Free State province, but our correspondent Innocent Semosa was at the Pretoria celebration and now reports.
Thousands of workers from across the country converged to commemorate May Day and emphasize the importance of workers' rights. Protesters clashed with security as they forced their way to the venue, disrupting Deputy President of South Africa, Paul Mashatile's keynote address. The proceedings were stopped for at least 30 minutes as the audience sang and chanted slogans while waving placards that said, among other things, no reduction in working hours and SLAPE must go. Eventually, the Deputy President addressed the crowd.
I've read your placards as you were going through. I've listened to your songs. If I analyze it, the message here, the workers are very unhappy. We are promising you that that decision to look at the challenges that the workers are facing is not going to be an empty promise. I don't want you to say, Comrade Paul is making promises because he wants us to vote in 2024. No, I'm making the promise that we are going to address the challenges that the workers are facing because we want the workers to have a better life.
Today, well, as the 2024 elections draw closer, concerns around job security and corruption are growing. With corruption scandals, factionalism, and of course declining local support, we understand that these challenges have strained the African National Congress relationship with the alliance partners.
We want to warn them that this next year is going to be like 1994, where workers are going to go up in arms and vote the ANC out. Perhaps it's the time that you allow the SACP to contest state power.
On job security, I'm wondering, but on corruption, it's something that it needs the whole nation to come and support and fight for that. But from where we need to make sure that we fight that corruption, because that's the very same corruption that takes away our jobs.
The celebrations in other parts of the country also saw similar demands. In the Free State province, where President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed workers, some of whom were not prepared to listen.
The deteriorating of basic services, the rising inflation, corruption and criminality continue to cripple the economy and threatened the ability of workers to improve their lives and take care of their families.
We want to say that yes, issues such as poverty, unemployment, inequality are challenges that can only be effectively addressed if we, as the Alliance, continue working together.
The collective desire is for better working conditions, fair wages, and an end to corruption that affects job security. From Pretoria, South Africa, Innocent Simosa, Channels Television News.
And finally on the program, 2 pairs of giant panda twins gathered around a table for a breakfast party at Chongqing Zoo in southwest China's Chongqing City, attracting many visitors during the ongoing Labor Day holiday. The pandas, named Shuang Shuang, Chong Chong, Zi Zi, and Quing Quing, sat on 4 wooden chairs around the table in the zoo's giant panda hall. An irresistible meal of fresh bamboo shoots and carrots laid out before them. The zoo staffs noted that due to the setup, the bears resemble 4 humans playing the classic Chinese tile game of mahjong, which is traditionally played on a square table with 4 players. The panda quartets were named after the Chinese term Shuang Chong Zi Quing, which means double joy in Chinese, as both sets of twins were born on the same day. In addition to giant pandas, the Chongqing Zoo also features a variety of animals that are attracting visitors during the holiday, including elephants, giraffes, and rhinos, as well as newborn pony and kangaroo. And on that very cute note to end the world today, thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Enjoy the holiday.